Jimmy, do you want to give us an intro on our incredible guest?
Yeah, so we have Ashley Underwood, who Ashley, you were the director of the Dreambreaker documentary.
Yeah, director.
And then Craig, you were the writer, is that right?
The writer and producer, yeah.
Writer and producer. Craig, your last name's Coyne?
Coyne, yeah, very
Coyne.
well.
So we have Ashley Underwood, Craig Coyne, the new Dreambreaker, a pickleball story documentary. You can see it on True TV. You can see it on Max. It's everywhere right now. So we are super pumped to have them on and to kind of talk about, you guys filmed this over a course of 2 years, I think.
Yeah, two and a half. We started in November 2021.
Yeah, crazy.
MLP in Dripping Springs in November 21 was our first film date.
Your first. Wow.
So you guys the cause of everything? Is this just for the movie? Is that what you guys wanted?
We planned it all. A narrative arc with a 3-act structure that has, a beginning, middle, end.
So tell us a little bit how you, like, your backgrounds in filmmaking to begin with, and then obviously how you guys met and got into pickleball. Ashley, we'll start with you a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Well, my background is, I had a background sort of in like producing. I worked on a lot of like Sacha Baron Cohen projects. I don't know if you guys are a fan of those, like Who Is America?
We love Borat. We're big Borat fans.
So I did that for like a number of years. I did a little bit in development, which is kind of how this project came along. I had a development job with a production company that had a deal with Apple, and I had a small amount of money to go out and shoot a sizzle reel on pickleball because they liked the subject of pickleball, but we were kind of looking for like an insider story. We didn't want to just do like an overview of something, like a phenomenon, like a Wikipedia page on pickleball, which is kind of what was being pitched to me by executives. And I was like, I don't know. I really want like to tell a story, and then we can get all the pickleball, like all the people who play, all the quirkiness of it, all the characters, all the people in the rec space, but like, let's have a story that we can sort of, hang on to for this ride, if you will. And we'll get all that sort of color and stuff around it. And then I met Craig when he was doing a Vanity Fair piece, also in 2021, right, Craig?
Came out in October of 21.
Yeah, so that was one of the first pieces I think ever written about pickleball, or just how explosive it was, and how people like Leo DiCaprio and these celebrities were playing, and just how it had really taken off. I think you talked about the pro game also in that article. I read it again yesterday, which was really funny to go and look back at what pickleball was just a few years ago versus what it is now. And I thought it was like so well written. And then Craig and I started talking, and he knew everybody in the space. And he just offered generously to share like his Rolodex with me and introduce me to people. And then ultimately we became partners because Craig was just such a wealth of knowledge about the world of pickleball. So I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, Craig.
Yeah, Craig, how did you get to know everybody in the space and kind of get into it? And obviously you both play, right?
Yeah.
So I fell in love. Like, I didn't grow up, big sports fan. I didn't grow up a racket sports player. But I first played pickleball in, I believe, 2017, and just instantly, like so many people, instantly hooked, loved it. And found, and for the next couple of years was just sort of obsessed with it, like trying to understand what was happening, what wasn't happening. In that, at that point in time, it was purportedly the fastest growing sport in America. There were about 3 million players in, maybe 18, 19. They were claiming. I was ordering equipment online. I was Googling stuff all the time. And I realized I had never received one targeted ad. And I was like, this is insane. Like, we can't right now say I want a new pair of running shoes and not get, like an OnClouds ad, on our phone, or like, why, like, this is just so, it was so confounding to me of like, why this seemed so underappreciated in a sense. And I was like, so I had to understand this mission. I became obsessed. And I also thought, there doesn't seem to be any big brand in this space, and it's the fastest growing sport. Like, maybe I should do something. Maybe I can make a lot of money on pickleball. But I made a documentary instead, and
We made the least amount of money of anybody.
Well, your passion took over from trying, instead, right?
Everyone's an entrepreneur, and we missed the boat. But
I realized, like, kind of bizarrely, I was talking to someone at Vanity Fair, and I'd been a screenwriter, but I hadn't written any like prose or print journalism. And this guy at Vanity Fair was like, "Oh, yeah, kind of." Someone had been like, "You should start a pickleball magazine." And so you're a writer, do a high-end pickleball magazine. I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And I called this guy at Vanity Fair to get his advice, and he was like, "Do not start a magazine. That's the worst idea I've ever heard. But if you want to write something for us, we'd love to have you do that." So it's taking a long way to get to it. And I was like, I'm not really interested in writing about celebrities playing pickleball. And, I knew just because I'd gone pretty deep in the space, like, that some were, real devotees of the game. And then I realized if I wrote an article for Vanity Fair, I could get to know everyone. And it was like a little fiefdom, like groups of fiefdoms at that time. You had like the Selkirk guys, you had what Steve was doing in Austin, you had Ben, you had Tyson, you had Simone, you had these, these characters all over the country. But it was like, I don't know them. They have no reason to talk to me. But if I'm writing a piece for Vanity Fair, I can get to know these people and I can understand the space better. And so I used writing a Vanity Fair article to try to more deeply, comprehensively figure out what the hell was and was not happening in pickleball. And in that time, I met Ashley, and also in that time, I met Steve and saw what was happening on the pro side of things, and thought, this is really interesting. This pro sport is being birthed before our very eyes, and there's the PPA, there's MLP, there's the APP, all kind of coming into their own at the same time. Like, no idea what's going to happen, but it might get weird.
Yeah.
You guys,
it did get weird, right? But you guys timed it perfectly. Like, you were there. I mean, you started this at the birth of pro pickleball almost. Like, I mean,
very serendipitous, the timing of it. And that, I mean, down to, there's kind of like emerges like kind of a clear, like winner at the end. And then we couldn't get an interview like Tom, like the whole time. And then, we really felt like the film wouldn't be complete without him. So, we had like very, very little money left. And like, he finally agreed to do an interview. So I hopped in a plane and flew to Dallas, and I was like, oh, thank God, because we really wanted them to have a voice in the story and to also be represented. And so I think we were very, very lucky that that story kind of has a nice, like a conclusion at the end. Because without that, it just it would have just felt like kind of an unsatisfying story ending, I guess, if you will.
Yeah, we were braced the whole time we were making it for an open ending that might feel unsatisfying to viewers, because we obviously don't know what's going to happen with professional pickleball, and we knew that we weren't going to be able to sort of complete the pro pickleball story. But given what happened at the end, of which you guys are a major part in explaining that and telling our audience, it did feel, to Ashley's point at least, that we were able to complete a chapter in the story of professional pickleball. And we were fortunate also in that, I remember talking to Ashley, and I was in Maine. I was in the hospital. My daughter had just been born, and I was pitching her the pro pickleball angle, and I was like, how are we going to do this? We don't have much money. I called Steve Kuhn, and he was amazing about saying that
Did he sell a pickleball team to you guys?
I wanted to buy, I will say this on the record, I really wanted one of the first expansion teams. I wasn't early enough, and I'm still a little bitter I don't have one. But we shot at that first MLP, which was obviously really fortunate considering how his story evolved, and to have gotten to be there at the beginning. And they were great. Steve was nothing but exceptional when it came to access and welcoming us, and to that point, like, even if Tom didn't want to appear on camera, initially, he was equally great about allowing us to film at the PPA and supporting us. So we were very, very lucky when it came to the leagues.
You were able to get kind of access to both sides, which I think is huge. But initially it sounds like you kind of it was Steve Kuhn who was, you were kind of talking to, working with. So you get to that first MLP and you guys start recording there, which I believe BLQK, California Black Bears.
Yeah.
Win. No surprise. But what was that like? Like, because you played it recreationally at that point for 3 years. Obviously, you said you were obsessed. Ashley, were you playing recreationally at that point?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. I started playing during COVID. I was a tennis player, and then I just had some friends. They didn't play tennis, and I kind of I think we were like a group of, there were like 4 couples, and we would all play together on Sundays. And then Matt Manassi actually became the pickleball coach at the
coach to the stars.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's my fault that I labeled him that in the Vanity Fair piece. So I have to.
I think he's embraced it. I mean, I think it's.
You can say
and good for him. He's found, like, he's a really smart, savvy guy, and he really. He really made the most of it.
I mean, he even drafted himself at MLP. Then he had to cut himself, but at least he drafted himself.
That's how it's done in Hollywood.
All right, real quick. Can you give us a little recap? So the movie is still going on right now. How is the perception, or up till now, the numbers? Are they what you expected, less or more? And then we'll get into some hard-hitting questions that we have from the documentary.
Okay. Actually, when something is streaming, I think True TV will share data with us. But streamers, I'm sure there's maybe a way to access numbers. You mean viewership? Like,
yeah, just how's the reception been? Like, is it what you thought it would be? Is it a little bit less? Is it more?
They're very mysterious about it. We don't have any feedback from them.
Oh, that's crazy.
We don't have hard metrics.
But I think streamers typically won't share numbers with people. I don't know why that is.
So for those that don't know, like, you guys created this documentary, and then you actually premiered it at a film festival, right?
Yeah, we were in 2 film festivals. So the first,
and then it was purchased from that film festival. Is that how it works, or?
No, sometimes that's how. Sometimes that's how. There are a couple different avenues for distribution. Showing at film festivals is one way, but we have, like, William Morris Endeavor was our financier, and they have a sales team. So they were, they would go out to people and try to sell the film. But Craig and I were very much involved in that process, and so I would say we had a hand in the distribution deals with this film.
Awesome. Have you been excited about the feedback so far, or what are your guys' kind of expectations or thoughts with it?
Yeah, I think it was really fun. Like, the first time that I showed the film in San Francisco to a room of people that weren't, like, related to me or my friends. It was just a group of strangers.
The ones that have to like it.
Yeah, and I sat in the back row. There was a Q&A at the end, but I don't think anybody knew that I was in the room. So I felt like it was a very sort of honest reaction to the film, and I sat in the back row, and that was really cool as a filmmaker, to just see an audience, to see them laughing, to just see them into it. And then I did a Q&A at the end, and I looked out to a room of, like, smiling faces, and I was like, oh, this film plays well, and it seems like it's well received. And then, just from feedback we've had from, like, friends and on social media, or all the screenings that we've done, I think people seem to really like it. And one of the coolest things is most people that I've shown the film to are pickleball players. Like, they play all the time. They're, like, obsessed with it, and they know Matt, or they know, like, Wes Burrows, or they know some of the LA guys who are pros, who are coaches out there, and they had no idea that this story existed. So I think it was cool for people who play the sport and love it so much to learn this story and know something more about the pro game. I don't even think they were aware of the pro game really. They all these people who are fanatics who play all the time. You know, I don't know if they were familiar with like a Ben Johns or an Anna Lee. And I think that, I don't know if that's common or not, but I feel like when I screened the film, people were excited to learn, you know, who these pro players were and to know this story.
So I think that's actually what you guys have done is kind of bridge that gap, because the hardest part I feel like for the pro game is that, you know, there's 20, 30 million recreational players and there's 25,000 that are watching these pro matches. And
Right.
it's like, how do you bring the pro game to the recreational players where they want to watch the pros play? And I think that this kind of helps bridge that gap. Like you said, there's a lot of people that, you know, we always debate this on our show is like, if Ben Johns showed up to a local park, how many people would know him?
Right.
You know, there's a few because there's obviously all the diehards out there, but there's probably a vast majority that wouldn't even know who he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw that kind of changing over the course of the film, and I hope it continues to change. I think people are more, but the pro game is played so differently than the rec game, and it's funny. I joke that my game got better, my pickleball game got better because I spent so many hours in the edit watching like the best people play, and I was like, I think I'm absorbing like you know skills through like osmosis. Like just
like a quarterback watching film, right? Like,
I think I've gone back to my baseline now, but like during that chunk of time, it actually improved my game. And I think that people don't know how the pros play the game. You know, I just think there's an art to it and it's different.
But I also think something that's interesting that I agree with everything Ashley just said, but is interesting is like, you know, as you said, like, what would Ben's recognition be if he walked, you know, into a Trader Joe's or onto a pickleball court, you know, where a bunch of people are playing in a park? Like, I don't know. And it's interesting in the course of making this movie that we really saw. You know, at the beginning, we showed up. I can tell you this: we showed up to Dripping Springs in early November 21. My Vanity Fair piece had just come out, and we were so welcomed. And people were, not that we were doing it obviously for any altruistic reason. I didn't write that article charitably, but people were like, "Thank you for kind of taking us seriously. Thank you for." You know, trying to showcase us as elite athletes, which you are as professional pickleball players, tremendous athletes. But that demeanor, that tenor really shifted in those 2 years that we made the movie. And, you know, we touch on that in the film of, you know, we kind of joke, we went from feeling as like the players themselves perhaps felt by and large like the butt of the joke in the sports world in 21, and then felt like the cool kids in class, you know, when LeBron, like I was on a call yesterday and I agreed with kind of pickleball insider I was talking to. The biggest day in the history of pickleball was the day that it was announced that LeBron invested in MLP. Whatever he ended up putting in, I heard from people in the UAE, I heard from people in India, I heard from people in Sweden. Like, it was so legitimizing for the sport and for these athletes. And there's that real, whether Ben or Anna Lee, obviously the two biggest names in the sport, have really transcended yet or not is an argument that I don't know what I believe the right answer is to. But there is a momentum now in an insular world, and it obviously is a very insular world still. Like, people feel like they're stars maybe, or that their profiles have raised, whether that is
I mean, they act like it for sure.
And like by certain
egos are there.
You're making more money. Like, yeah,
That was fun to witness too, because when we first started out, you know, it was a very kind of folksy community vibe at that first MLP, and then we got to see
Tyson got his new teeth, and changed.
We went to the draft in Vegas, and it was at 21, and it was just like, oh, this is very, you know, this is a different. Like, it was so hard to believe that there was only less than a year and a half from. When
Was that MGM or Mandalay?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That one where like it was the first like pre-merger. Yeah. And I was just like, wow, this is.
I mean, we were laughing because we had such good access in the beginning, and like we said, you know, everybody was so excited that there was a camera crew that showed up, or that, you know, that it felt legitimizing. And then cut to a year later, you know, people were like, I don't know, you have to call my agent, like you have to talk to my agent. And I was like, oh my God, it was so hard to even get access to film the draft. And I was, you know, even as a documentary filmmaker, and some of the difficulty I've had getting access to things before, I don't think anything was ever as difficult as like getting access to film at the first MLP draft. And we just kind of like, I was like, I can't believe this.
But
you know?
and it was also sort of like all over the map, because like we would get that from a lot of people. But then like Ashley would text Ben, and Ben would just be like, yeah, sure, cool, I'll come film. You know, like it was like different.
Yeah.
You know, Leia, who gave a all-time great interview.
I think Leia, I'll tell you this, Leia was an absolute star in that.
He was a star. He was a star.
I wish Ashley could do a director's cut, and it would basically just be Leia's interview, just throwing bombs like fearlessly. Like,
so she came on our pod when we first started, and it's one of our most viewed, and she was dropping bombs on everybody.
Well, the funniest is we actually did 2 or 3 different interviews. One of them we just had to redo completely.
One of them got a little too out of control, but yeah, Leia's great.
Yeah, she's also super smart and thoughtful. Like there are a lot of really, like Irina, who I wish we had more of in the film because she's so smart. Like there's really, in addition to just like colorful, fun characters in this space, like there are a lot of really bright, really articulate, really thoughtful athletes in like, and it made for like really interesting conversation always, and perspective. And I have a lot of, you know, a lot of affection for the community. And when you asked about reception, I wish I had a greater sense from some individuals or some members of the pro pickleball community, what they thought, what they think. Yeah, because I really, you know, it's obviously an individual basis, but I think we grew to really love the I don't know, kind of love the pros. Certainly rooting for you, rooting for it to all work out.
Love it. So let's get into some nitty gritty questions now.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously you guys were right in the middle of all of this. You got to see it behind the scenes. I mean, you recorded phone calls that were happening. You were, you know, I think you're in Julio's apartment, like all these things. So like, in your opinion, being there and watching it and having all this uncut, how close was MLP to signing Ben and Annalie, in your opinion? Do you think it was, because it sounds like in the documentary that Connor basically said they had signed Ben, but that wasn't 100% true at the time. And then we know that Ben actually only signed when he actually signed, it was a 1-year deal. So what are your thoughts on that? And because that changes the landscape, right? I
actually didn't film that. I wasn't the one to go to Julio's apartment. They gave us, I was begging them to let us film. They said no a bunch. And then I'm like, you know, that like mosquito that like won't go away. You know?
Yes. That's what makes you a good filmmaker, right?
And so I kept talking to them, and then I don't know how, but they sort of reluctantly agreed. And one of our co-directors lived in New York, and I called him. Craig happened to be, I think you were out of town then, but we had a co-director who lived right there. And I was just like, okay, you gotta go over. And he was like, but we don't have a camera guy, we don't have a crew. And I said, by the time you get there, I'll have a camera guy there waiting for you.
That's awesome.
Like, just show up. And so I don't know if, I mean, I wasn't there in the room, and I had I don't really know if I have an answer to your question. It felt high stakes to me. It felt like it was very, very close, that it could have, you know, I don't know, like that the scales could have tipped, you know, in either direction easily. What do you think, Craig?
I don't think we know much more from that date than you guys do, if we know anything. I do agree completely. Had they been either, it's definitely if they gotten both, I think then it's over. Ashley very astutely yesterday or the other day made a popular vote electoral college analogy, where obviously they MLP won the popular vote, but Ben and Anna Lee are just so heavily weighted that like the electoral college.
Ben and Anna Lee are California and Texas.
Yeah,
and
that's
and
actually
so,
a great analogy.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Look, I don't know anything you guys don't know. I would have. I feel like there were always pretty strong ties to PPA for both Ben and Anna Lee. Is my gut read on it. I would have been surprised
from what I had heard, Ben was pretty close to the PPA always, but I heard that Anna Lee was actually really close to MLP. From what I heard.
Yeah,
I mean, we know that Ben's dad obviously was talking to MLP and negotiating with MLP to a point, at least entertaining it.
I mean, the most interesting outcome would have been had they split, and then what would have happened?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
Well, I think you're right, Craig, that if MLP, because the reality is MLP ended up with the majority of the players, right? Like, kind of like Ashley said, they got the popular vote, and they end up with critical mass and the majority of the players. But if you just look at it on paper, you're like, okay, MLP has all of these players. Why was there still a merger? Like, what was the fatal mistake there? And is it just the weight that Anna Lee and Ben carry, or do you think it was something else?
I don't know. I wondered at one point, I was like, do they have equity in like one of the leagues, or do they have, I don't know. There was a good point though, in listening to those calls, which I think Steve Kuhn misunderstood at first, but there was somebody talking about a point system, like how basically MLP didn't have a system in place that could establish like who the best player in the world was.
Yeah, so they could tout being number one in the world or whatever.
Right. And I think that actually carried a lot of weight. I think if something could have tipped the scales, like maybe I think that actually could have been a winning argument to both Ben and Anna Lee. Just the fact that, and I think MLP, I think in their discussions, I think they were saying that they would come up with a point system like that to be able to, do a similar like rankings system. But, it's PPA already had that established and already had.
All right. So tell us, whose voice was that in the apartment?
Can't tell you. Julio.
We didn't even know. And then we had disguised all of the voices, but I didn't even think.
I'll be really honest with you. I would know that Jesus Christ anywhere. So maybe I won't out him, but I did ask him and he said, I'm pretty sure that's me.
So yeah, please don't, because after getting that access, which I still can't believe we got, I showed the footage. I went over to Julio's apartment in New York. There were, he was so great to the project, remains, great to the project. And, watched it with him, and which was kind of tense, not because he was super gracious and great, but like it was just for me like kind of a tense experience. And he was very helpful and be like, obscure this guy's voice, he will sue you. It was like, oh, okay.
I mean, there was a point during Tour Wars, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but it'll get me in trouble and not you, where like Jason Stein was threatening to sue Tim Parks using Elon Musk's lawyer because Tim Parks was against the merger and Jason Stein was trying to get the merger done. I mean, the whole thing was just super intense. And now they're like best friends, but it was just super intense, and how everybody was kind of like had their own opinions on things and what they wanted to happen. And
I mean, it's also funny because you take a step back, and I say this with, again, the absolute most respect for the pro pickleball players, but you have all these guys with all their money, all their portfolios, these incredible investors, businessmen, super smart, super savvy. And it's not like Live PGA where you're fighting over like established global brands and some of these golfers, like, you're fighting over people who have a few hundred Instagram followers in certain cases. Like there is something sort of like inherently
Ouch, I felt that.
No, it's true. Though. He's not wrong.
I need to go buy more followers.
A lot of the humor comes from, I feel like.
But you're 100% right on that. Like,
but it's like, to that point of, let's say the merger had not happened and MLP had gone off without Ben and Anna Lee, it would have been really interesting to have seen how hurt is the league by not having the two best players. Like, are people still coming? Are they still watching? Like, we don't yet know. We know that stars can be bigger than the sport. We know that tennis is hurt when Federer and Serena retire and Nadal's out. Like, that's bad for tennis. We know what golf's numbers are like when the biggest players aren't in that tournament. We don't yet know, I think, the weight of the stars in pickleball, just because it's, still in its infancy, and so there's a lot of guesswork that's being done.
I think PPA does to some extent, because they have YouTube and videos and everything like that, and according to them, all the videos with Annalie and Ben, their top players, perform drastically better than every other video out there.
But the question would be, for me, on the flip side, like,
what would it look like without them?
Well, not even that, but on the PPA side, how engaging would it be to watch Ben and Annalie play Matt Wright and Lucy Kovalova every week over and over and over and over and over again, because there's nobody else to compete with them. There's 8 top pros that stayed with PPA, and there wasn't a lot of parity at that time anyways, but now you don't even have many of these top players to compete with them.
Yeah.
And you look at, like, over the last 2 years, you look at a Federico Staksrud and Hayden Patrick-Quinn and Anna Bright, and all those players signed with MLP, and now they're all at the top of the sport, where, they would still be over with MLP, and you wouldn't have them to compete with Ben and Annalie.
Right.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I don't know what the right comps are. I mean, it's like, could you look at PSG dominating French football for years, and then maybe when they go into Champions League, like, then they're facing the top other European club. Like, I don't know what the comp is, but I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised to hear that the Ben and Annalie videos perform better, but also, like, the distribution is, I don't know the numbers behind it, but pretty awesome. Like, I go to the gym in Brooklyn. I went to, like, a store not far from here the other day, pickleball streaming, like, it's right there next to, PTI or whatever's playing at the same time on ESPN. Awesome. On the TV next to it. Like, I don't know how many people are seeking it out, but it does seem it's growing. It's pretty awesome.
I've been playing for quite a while. I've been playing for over 10 years, and I feel like I say this every single year, but I say this year has increased significantly compared to the previous year. And I feel like I've said that every single year, and it's crazy how it keeps happening.
Well, they just released numbers on the most recent MLP that they just did last weekend, and it's the second highest gate they've ever had. I think they were close to $200,000, in
ticket sales.
Yeah. It was the second highest attendance they've ever had besides New York last year.
They all watch Dreambreaker.
Yeah, that's why. That's exactly why. They had all these new fans from Dreambreaker.
How many pairs of sunglasses did they sell to help people look at their
gosh. That was nuts. Yeah, I'm not sure that was the best decision, but
shoot, never mind. I forgot my question. I apologize.
So let me ask just a little bit, because you said Tom Dundon. It felt like Tom Dundon was, even in the documentary, it almost felt like he was a ghost. Like Julio literally says, so they had already completed one merger, at least agreed to a merger, had an LOI, and then that fell through, but they were still working together. And Julio is the CEO of MLP, and he says, I've never even been on an email with Tom Dundon.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that's that different today. I can't speak for either of those guys, but I agree. Because I was also, like, actually not in there when that apartment when we filmed, but watching that footage, that really jumped out to me of, like, wow, the relationship is so, or just in a place where the guy owns one league and the league they're merging with the CEO, they've never even been on an email together. I agree. That was a really telling moment.
Yeah, it felt like he was like, I don't know, the Godfather in a way, and he's
Like
untouchable.
the Wizard of Oz. Like
Yeah, the Wizard of Oz. And then at the end, like, you know,
Yeah.
you guys were able to interview him. And like you said, you're able to tie it together and kind of finally close the chapter. But it was like he had this like aura about him. And he, you know, I still think to this day, everybody is, I don't want to use the word scared, but I think everybody's scared of Tom Dundon. He's the one that's pulling all the strings behind the scene. And everybody is like, you know, everyone calls him Daddy Dundon, which is kind of funny. It's kind of the pickleball nickname, but I really think everybody's trying to get Daddy Dundon's approval,
Right.
you know, and impress him. And so, yeah,
What-
just kind of your thoughts on him and, you know, because I always argue that I don't think Tom Dundon loves pickleball. Steve Kuhn loves pickleball. I felt like he loves it. He's obsessed with it. I think Connor Pardo loves it, but he also loves to make money. So I think that he's torn two different directions. Dundon, I think, just wants to make money.
I'll tell you what, I have had a handful of calls with Tom. I've had lunch with him. I don't know him that well. I've had nothing but really nice experiences with him. I was surprised, pleasantly impressed with how, going back a couple years ago, how knowledgeable he was. I do think he loves pickleball.
Boom.
I think that those two, like Steve and their styles are just so different. I mean, they're, you know, I don't think anybody loves pickleball as much as Steve Kuhn. But I don't think the fact that Tom Dundon doesn't express that, you know, in the same way, I don't think it means that he has less love.
That's fair.
But yeah. I do believe that part of why Steve, which is really heartening and really beautiful, why Steve loves pickleball is for what it has done in this country and increasingly obviously around the world as it grows internationally, which is, you know, bridge divides that typically keep us apart. It's allowed multi-generations of families to enjoy a sport together. Like these things that have nothing to do with making money, but I think he recognizes and appreciates, and part of why he's so evangelical about the sport. And I think that's actually a pretty beautiful thing, because
you should have explained to him in the electoral college terms about how different players are weighted, and then maybe that could have helped, because he thinks that pickleball will save America. Yeah.
He did once float the idea to me of which I love. Like Steve's a big thinker, obviously, and we had a funny conversation once about running a camp. I mean, this was like 2019, maybe 2020, possibly. So I don't think it would have been the 2020 election, but of like supporting like a single issue candidate to run for president of the United States
on pickleball,
like a pickleball evangelist, and so like I love this sort of proselytizing, I suppose. But like, yeah, so I think Tom loves the sport. Steve obviously loves the sport, and I do think Steve appreciates all these things sort of outside of the sort of scope of MLP and money making about the sport, which I think is a really cool thing.
Do you think Steve's unfortunate kind of fatal mistake in all this was that after he pulls the strings on, you know, the tour wars and starts this whole, you know, signing process, then all of a sudden we get to the end and he doesn't have any way to pay these players, and his idea is to kind of let's sell more teams.
Well, it's really interesting to me, like the difference between, you know, an entrepreneur or like a visionary. You know, like we have all these stories like the Adam Newmans at WeWork, or you have like these founders who are very charismatic. They're great salesmen. They're very passionate. You know, and you see their rise, and then you see this kind of these idealists who kind of, you know, they'll get voted out by the company that they started. They'll get ousted. And I feel like that's I feel like that's a little bit what happened here. I don't know.
Like, I mean, I think here's a great idea. You know, this is what I think we should do, and here's my idea. And then it's like the adults come in, they're like, okay, well, let us bring it to fruition now.
Yeah, and there are oftentimes a pretty fundamental misalignment, and John Venison says it in the movie pretty economically when he's like, if you have trouble dating, I'm not sure it's a great idea to get married. And there are differences in those guys and their philosophies and their ethos, and so there probably was a lot of kinks to be ironed out. And as far as what
maybe he would have been able to sell more teams. Maybe he would have been able to get that money. I just
he would have been able to sell more teams.
Yeah, I mean, like Craig, like you said, the LeBron James thing was massive, right? And then all of a sudden, it's Tom Brady, and it's Lil Wayne is the designer of the Texas Rangers uniforms, and Trae Young is showing up to events for the bouncers. And
I was at an MLP in Atlanta where Trae Young came.
And that I think gave validity to the sport and elevated the sport. And I even asked, I've asked Samin, who was just named commissioner of MLP, and I said, you worked for Kevin Durant. Like, does Kevin Durant even know? Because Hayden Pachequin and Anna Bright were in Vegas, and they ran into Kevin Durant, and Hayden was technically on Kevin Durant's team, the Brooklyn Aces. And I said, does Kevin Durant even know who these guys are? And Samin's like, Jimmy, he watches. Like, he sends me texts being like, hey, big win this weekend.
Yeah, I think he's, I think obviously in that ownership, extensive celebrity ownership group, there are those who love it, and they're like, I know I've never played with Kevin Durant, never met the guy. I know people who have played with him. I think he does love the sport. It's awesome to hear that he's actually watching his team. I've talked to another high profile team owner who was not very aware of his team, or I'm sure could not have named players on it. So,
I mean, this was John McEnroe's point in the film. Like some people, they didn't even know where their team was, he's like, it could be up in the cloud and you can make millions. But I think that there are some team owners who are very hands-on. I just think it's the luck of the draw. Like, some people are very hands-on and some are not.
Like, interestingly, given that, we agreed at some point that one of the biggest moments in the history of pickleball is that announcement that LeBron was investing. I don't know if LeBron's ever held a pickleball paddle.
I would think that as well.
Yeah, for sure. But like, whenever someone, starts playing pickleball, like some celebrity or athlete, like it makes headways in the pickleball community. I mean,
Agassi's been doing it lately, and he loves it.
Agassi's big. He's obviously playing with Annalie Waters at the U.S. Open, but like Mookie Betts is obsessed with pickleball, and I know he plays in LA all the time and plays with a couple groups of people that I know, and they're like, yeah, he is like always texting us and being like, hey, you guys want to play? Let's get a group together.
I think Mookie Betts is also bowled like some insane number of 300 games. I think he's just like an athlete. Yeah. I'm sure he's a monster on the pickleball court.
Yeah.
But it has taken. There was just an article I'm sure you guys saw on ESPN like a week or so ago, around the time of opening day of this Major League Baseball season, of just like, it's just wildfire in the MLB. Like, obviously the Cubs dug out our bullpen a couple years ago. That was a big moment, I feel like, in pickleball.
Yeah. And everybody was like, oh, they're using Selkirk paddles, and it was like a huge thing.
But like, it's just like torn through the MLB. Like, obviously during the NBA bubble during COVID, it was played a lot there. Like, it is. I'm excited to see more like as excited as I am to see like what becomes of Jack Sock, who's obviously such a great athlete. I really want to see some of these other, like, I want to see Mookie Betts play pickleball. I'd be really interested in that.
Yeah. What's his skill level right now?
I think he's like a low 5.0, high 4.5, low 5.0, and he's only playing in the off season. But like Brad Penny, who's a pitcher, they say he's really good. JD Martinez just signed a deal with Yola.
I played with Drew Brees, who was pretty good. He's also just like a winner. Like, I played with him, and I was like, he just has like this incredible, like, he's obviously a team owner. He's been to an MLP, like, loves the sport. Like, I played
he's one of the very active ones.
Yeah, I played with him, and I was just like, you're a world-class athlete, not only a world-class athlete, like a quarterback, a sort of field general of, like, he just had like this factor about him.
we had him. So we did like a thing at the Super Bowl last year, and we had him on the podcast. He came on and we did it in person, and there's just something about him, like the way he carries himself and the way
He's a winner.
he is. And it's like you feel, I don't, it sounds funny. And like, cause I don't think he's like as big of a name as obviously like a LeBron but he is still a big name, but you do feel like you're in like in the presence of greatness when you're around him. It's wild.
I couldn't agree more. I was kind of wowed by it. Like there is something. He's like nothing but super nice and like great, and wasn't deliberately doing anything to like create that. It just is him.
No,
like
exactly, super down to earth, humble guy. I went to lunch with him in San Diego last year too, and I'm like, dude, I'm taller than this guy by 2 inches, and but it's still like there's just something about him.
Yeah.
Sure.
But he loves the sport. I've never played. Yeah, I think he's probably the only like elite pro athlete from another sport I've ever played with. But like, I would love to see someone transition. Obviously, like we talk about that in the film, but
yeah. Well, we're also seeing like obviously other celebrities. I just saw an article today. Ryan Reynolds is turning a Warner Brothers studio. He's putting in pickleball courts in a studio because it's kind of empty and they're not filming, and so he's adding courts to a studio in LA right now. And he's like making them like themed, like one's like sci-fi and one's, and so things like that, I think we're going to see. And I know that like, there was actually an empty studio in Burbank that they filmed like High School Musical at, and the Pickler was one of the sponsors of our show. They were looking at it to actually convert it into a Pickler. Because
LA does not have, they really don't have a lot of space for there. It's not like a lot of like Austin or some of these other cities where you can build these pickleball complexes that have become so popular. Like, I live over near Santa Monica, that we have like the Santa Monica Pickleball Club over there that just opened. They have 2 locations, but that's like, I think 12 or 13 courts. So, and that's the first, they had to go through so much like red tape and to even be able to do that. I think it took them a couple years, and but I'm happy that we have a place to go. Before that, it was like you had to belong to a country club, or you had to be friends with somebody who had built a court in their backyard and just hope to be invited to play.
Taping off this court.
An underutilized studio space because those typically have really high ceilings. Like that's actually a great like redevelopment of that space, because there definitely is, sadly for the film and TV industry, a lot of those empty spaces around LA right now. So that's kind of an interesting conversion.
Yeah, it seems like kind of smart. So what's your guys' thought? Like obviously we're talking about these celebrities, we're talking about these pro athletes. You guys have been around the sport. Like, what's your view on the future of pickleball? Like, where do you see this? We have these salaries right now that are on pro pickleball specifically, because like these salaries are, we talk about they're a little bit inflated right now. PPA lost, or UPA now lost $40 million last year. They're trying to renegotiate with players coming up to kind of make it more of a prize money based again and try and figure some of this stuff out. So just curious what your thoughts are, being right there in the heart of it, of where you see this going.
Also in terms of amateurs as well, not only for pros. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think.
I think it's a great question, because basically at the end of the day, it really comes down to is like for how long are people willing to lose money, really? And I do think it's growing. I think it will work. What's the ceiling, the scale of it? I don't know. It'd be interesting if it readopted more of a prize money based revenue system, because that's going to be hard. Like there is a little more parity maybe now, but we know who's typically playing on Sunday, and it's a tough, grueling life. And I'd be curious as a pro I'd really like to hear your thoughts on it, on how you think the pro community will adopt and adapt to that reformatting. I think it's growing more internationally than people might fully appreciate, and I think that's really interesting. And I do think it will be in the Olympics, and if this entity can stick around until then and hopefully grow a little bit every year. And it sounds like it is. I think that'll be a watershed moment, but I don't think it's smooth sailing ahead, but I think there's reason for optimism.
The argument that they're making in terms of going back to that prize money is that that's what, in order to land a TV deal, the TV execs are telling them, you've got to be playing for something. Playing for a trophy is not enough. It's not the Super Bowl. It's not, you know, the Larry O'Brien trophy in the NBA. Like, you got to be playing for something, and saying that they're playing for $50, $100, $200,000 brings more interest to the sport as opposed to playing for 200 points at the, you know.
Right. I mean, that is interesting. Like,
how the pickleball slam was. I mean, I think that they had great viewership. Didn't they have really great numbers? And
yeah, pickle slam crushed it.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's an example. I feel like, you know, I think it can get viewership, and I think there's reason for optimism, and you have examples of, you know, successes there.
And I mean, I'd also be curious to get your guys' thoughts on, like, stars obviously matter.
For sure.
And to this date, I would argue it with, you know, the deepest respect to Ben and Anna Lee, the star of the sport of pickleball is the sport of pickleball. People are watching pickleball on TV wherever because they love pickleball. And certainly, you know, there are people who like, oh, that's my favorite player, or like, oh, I want to see Ben and Anna Lee play because they're the greatest. But that's going to be really interesting to see who, like, someone, I was talking about a women's upstart women's rugby league in the U.S., which is kind of interesting. I was looking and they're like, oh, we've got to get this woman involved, and kind of it harkened back to almost that moment with Julio and Steve of like, how do we incentivize Anna Lee? Do we give her half a team? Do we give her two team? That's too, you know,
Julio was
$10
like,
million valuation.
Julio was like, what if I give her my team? Like, the CEO giving her.
That was wild.
Yeah.
But and I was like, I don't know who that person is. I looked up.
He's like, let's hit her with a bazooka, and then they're like, let's give her, you know, an expansion team, and he's like, that's 2 bazookas.
Exactly. And they're like, you know, we might have to give this woman one of these teams to get her involved. It's like, I don't know who this. I mean, I don't follow women's or men's rugby for that matter. And I looked up and I was like, oh, there's this women's rugby player who has like 5 million Instagram followers or something like that. And I was like, oh, so that's awesome. Like, good for her. You have to get her involved. And like, I guess when does the sport, when does a star help the sport grow? Because right now I think the sport is helping the stars grow. When does it become more symbiotic, I suppose? And that the, like, you know, tennis made Roger Federer, but Roger Federer helped grow tennis. And like, when I think that is as Doug Ellen articulated it.
By the way, Craig, you kind of give me Roger Federer vibes. Do you ever get that?
No, I don't. You've obviously never seen me.
You look a little bit like Federer, you think?
Breeze vibes, but I don't know. Are you cool?
I will tell you this. I was not filming. They were at I can't remember if it was an MLP or a PPA in San Clemente. Ashley and them were there filming, and I'd stayed in New York for that. And I'm getting texts, and they're like, "Oh my God, Roger Federer's here," and I was like, "No way." Roger Federer went to and I was like, this is crazy. And I was so mad at myself for not being there. And it was just a guy who looked less like Roger Federer.
That's funny.
Question for you guys. You guys obviously traveled around quite a bit. Do you personally have a preference for the PPA format versus the MLP format, one or the other?
I mean, I think the PPA format is kind of necessary, as you know, for the rankings and stuff. I think it's necessary for the sport, but I do think that I love the MLP format. I love the teams, and I think that just
so if Tour Wars were happening again, you would choose MLP.
No, I didn't say that. I think that both formats are like I think MLP is probably a more entertaining format. And I think that the PPA has, in order for the sport to grow, like a necessary, like a format.
They both have their place, right?
I agree. They've always, there's room for both, and they both have their place, and they are additive to one another. They're not natural. Like, if anything, the PPA and APP are the sort of natural competition for the other. MLP and PPA, other than obviously their finite number of weekends in a year, are only complementary to one another in format. So that's kind of what made it so regrettable, I think, that the direction everything went. But I think I agree with, if I had to go for weekend, I would probably go to an MLP event. I love seeing a Dreambreaker. I think there's a fun atmosphere. I took my dad for his 70th birthday to the MLP Atlanta, and it was just like a really kind of fun, cool day. My dad got to meet Ryan Sherry, which is obviously,
Unforgettable.
Cher Barrett is a legend.
Life-changing moment.
Talking about 401ks, but we got to get some ice in these coolers.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are closer to it than we are. What do you think? Same questions as far as like its viability, and do you have a preference between playing or as a spectator, MLP, PPA?
I think the viability, in my personal opinion, is good. I mean, every single year it seems to continue to grow and grow and grow. Obviously, they have to be very careful with the contracts and the prize money and everything like that. But it seems like if they're able to make it through the next 1 to 2 years where they kind of guarantee a significant amount of money, I think they should be fine. I mean, before, a lot of people don't talk about this, but before the tour wars, pickleball, the trajectory and the prize money and the net income profit, everything like that was just going up, 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 up. And so you take out all these contracts, then pickleball is profitable at this moment. And even now with these contracts, they're still doing very well.
I mean, yeah, the problem with it is the contracts that, when Kuhn pulled his little coup to try and, get that critical mass, it obviously accelerated the contract values for everybody. And it kind of forced PPA and MLP to accelerate what, they're 5 years ahead of where they probably should be in terms of contracts right now. And so I think that's what's kind of slowed the progress down. But with them being merged, and now you have this PWR in India kind of folded. APP's not giving a ton of prize money right now. I think they're at like 2.5 million total, which is great. But, when UPA is giving out 30 million, it's significantly different. Yeah. So I feel like they don't have a true rival right now. So I think that will kind of allow them to level out the player contracts. Exactly. Yeah. And maybe the players aren't going to be happy about it. And it's possible that you see some defections to other places, but the majority, it sounds bad, but the majority don't really have a choice.
Yeah. I think that's a really solid read on it. How given that the Indian one folded and the APP
in India, right?
Yeah, one is wasn't paying what the other one was. The one was PWR was promising massive deals.
Right. Yeah. PWR. Like, how vulnerable, if at all, do you think? Like, because I think it's easy when you're as close to this as the two of you are, as Ashley and I were for a while, and are still kind of close, maybe not as much in recent months, to think like, oh, this is settled. The dust is settled. We know we don't know where
I would say nothing is ever settled in pickleball. Every single day there seems to be a new rumor started by this guy or just something going on out there that just turns the feathers, turns everything upside down.
That's I don't know anything. Like, I haven't heard any whispers, but it's like, is some big money group that we don't even know is out there right now talking about this, gonna come in and try to make a play? Like,
so yeah, I mean, that's funny because I talk to obviously owners and GMs and lots of people all the time. And the big question is, at the end of 26, when all these contracts are up, does someone come in with $50 million and try to snatch up these players again? Because are they just laying in the weeds? Because there are the owners out there. I mean, the Chaffetz family, and there's billionaire owners out there. We're not talking million, we're talking billionaire owners that have the capacity to do that if they're unhappy, to say, hey, you know what, let's go to war again with these guys. and see if we can kind of start our own league and do our own thing. And it's very, very possible. Or it could just be some guy, businessman that's a fan, right? And he gets hooked on pickleball and he starts kind of following along and realizes that all these guys are about to become free agents, and why not swoop in? So yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
I was going to say, then we can make Dreambreaker too.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to ask you guys. Is there a part?
Maybe you guys should just start making it, and then you might foreshadow something.
Yeah, like, I mean, I feel like it's your fault. You started this thing, so.
And it is like, yeah, I mean, it is like, it's so early still. You know, we're in what, maybe the second inning of this thing. Like,
for sure.
Ground is still so tenuous. But and that's not because I'm seeing anything out of the, you know, post-merger group to make me think that they're vulnerable, just in, like, for all the reasons you just listed. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happens next, but
yeah,
I'm excited to see.
The other thing I always think about too is, like, every other league, every other pro sports league, right? The owners own the league, right? So like Roger Goodell is paid by NFL owners. The owners are essentially, they own the league. Well, MLP, UPA, you own your team, but you don't own the league for MLP. And so the question is this: do you get 22 owners, you know, or 15 owners that aren't happy with things, and they're all like, hey, we all kick in $2 to $3 million and we move our teams to this league? And now we own the league, and now, you know what I'm saying?
You're putting
like,
ideas out there, Jimmy.
Well, I'm just saying that, like,
Have you been talking to Tim?
There's other options. Like, you just never know what is going on behind the scenes. Like, you know, Craig kind of said it. Like, you don't know who's lying in the weeds and being like, I can do this better, and I've got the money for it.
Right now, Matt Manassi is raising the money to start.
Yeah, Matt
Pickleball,
Manassi. He's
coach
giving
of the
out
stars.
a lot of lessons right now, you know, to raise that money to all these stars.
He keeps increasing his rates.
I did see the other day that I think it was Sydney Steinecker is, like, running a celebrity pickleball league or something like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in LA, and it's like,
yeah, I think I saw something with her and Matt. I don't know if they're working together.
Yeah,
right?
so I just wonder, like, if that, you know, I mean, maybe that's the play. I remember watching back in the day. I'm going to age myself, but there used to be that on Saturday mornings they did that, like, superstars thing where they would take pros from other sports and they'd have them compete against, you know, they'd have them, like, run track, or they'd have them do, like, baseball players were trying to, like, you know, throw a football, or tennis, they'd play tennis, and they would have them compete. I think it was called, like, superstars or something.
You must be really old. I don't.
But I just feel like, you know, is there something out there where you can have these professionals in other sports come play pro pickleball?
I think the Slam probably illustrated the appetite for that. And again, like, those are obviously, like, those are stars not because of pickleball, but stars with, you know, brands, and now so you're coupling the star power of those individuals with the star power of the sport of pickleball. So I think there's probably massive opportunity, you know, and exactly that. Obviously, Colbert did his thing. I don't know what the viewership was for that, but I think I think there's still a lot of opportunity in this space. And, you know, people, when you talk about the pro stuff, like, I think people get really, you know, laser focused and tunnel visioned on that, and, you know, understandably so, but there's so much there for the taking. And I think there's so much still can be done. And I remember it's something I really love about Steve. I remember talking to him at a coffee shop near where I'm sitting right now in Brooklyn about, like, MLP, and just like, it should be fun. Like, pickleball should be fun. And like, it's early enough that you get to kind of create, and you're a founder, essentially. You create what this is. Like, it's not a legacy sport that has 100 years of precedent and protocol and an expectation of, like, oh, you wear all white at this event, or you don't talk when people are playing. Like, kind of celebrate and appreciate that the sort of fun of this sport. Like, I always think about Rock and Jock on MTV. You know, with, like,
you know what you're talking about.
They got the 4-pointer out there, and
exactly, like
the moving baskets.
and like people like were, MLP was still sort of innovating this, like we just don't know, like nothing is standard yet, like this is the first US Open where Chris and Terry aren't running the show. It'll be really interesting to see what the Pickle 4 folks do with it. Like there's not enough of a foundation behind anything that I think it can't change, or maybe it can't even be replaced. And so I expect some turbulence moving forward, but I believe in it. I believe in the pro side of things, and I believe that the sport is still undervalued and underappreciated, even if some of these players are arguably making more than the market, an open market might justify. I think it's an underappreciated sport and asset, to sort of misquote Steve, but
I agree. Is there, so what are your guys' two questions? I mean, are there any plans for a Dreambreaker 2, and also next question, what other projects are you guys working on right now?
Well, there are no plans for a Dreambreaker 2. Hopping back quickly to what you guys were just talking about, which kind of segues, I guess, into not a Dreambreaker 2, but some form of content around pickleball that can help like amplify the sport. But I feel like pickleball, I feel like there's an effort, like a branding effort, to sort of make it like tennis, and I feel like the leagues, if they want more eyes on the pro game, that they should probably lean into sort of, these pickleball fanatics, or some of these fun characters that you get in the sport, like somebody like Sleeves, like our narrator, who I think is like so knowledgeable.
He was
about
awesome.
the sport. But he looks like the dude from the Big Lebowski, but he's like, and he's just a diehard pro pickleball fan. And I just feel like the league should embrace some people like that. Like, it doesn't have to be.
I think MLP does a lot more than PPA.
Well, you guys had, what's his name? Was it Gizmo? You had Gizmo on there?
We also.
Or that lady Kat comes to all the games, and she has everybody's face on a popsicle stick.
Yeah, Kathy. Yeah, we filmed.
Yeah, I feel like media-wise that you have to get these people are fanatical about it, and it's such a, I think they're it's really fun to watch those people too. Even, I don't know in what capacity you do it in. I feel like our film did a really good job of doing it. And I think, and maybe there was some pushback from the leagues, like upon seeing our film, like, maybe it's a like detour from the branding that they want to have around it. But I just feel like,
I love it. Yeah.
I think that the film does a nice job of like honoring the pro athletes and the pro game, but also bringing in like this sort of thing that, like, leaning into the quirkiness too of pickleball and the rec side of it, and the people who are these diehards. I feel like, if you want to touch into the 40+ million people who are playing, that you have to kind of bring them into like the media of it all as well, because I think it just makes it more colorful. It brings some levity to it, and I don't think it has to take away from the seriousness or the legitimacy of the pro.
Yeah, it could feel more accessible, and I think that's a really good point. Like, I remember talking to someone who had worked at the USTA for a long time and been an executive there, and he said, that the struggle with the USTA, and I was talking about pickleball when I was like, oh, I'm gonna do something big in pickleball. I'm gonna own this sport, and he was like, the problem we had with the USTA is appreciating the tennis. Obviously, it's a sport. It's inherently a competition. There's a winner and a loser. Everyone would prefer to win. Some people are really serious and want to win their neighbor, subdivision, city, state, region, and advance through up the ladder of tournaments. A lot of people just want to play tennis, and he's like, we leaned too heavily on the competitive side, thereby alienating a lot of people who would rather win a match than lose it, but like weren't there to be like super serious. And he's like, our focus was on the competition, and it's probably an 80-20 split, when only 20% of people like are really diehard cutthroat tennis players who want to sort of advance in the tournament system. Pickleball is probably 95.5 of people who really care. And so making even the content accessible and fun and welcoming to those who like love the sport and would like to see the best at it play. But like, I don't know, that's a like tricky needle to thread, but I do fear that it feeling so sort of like serious and isn't the most helpful to get the like the casual rec pickleball player on board. But still, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the solve is there.
And
but
it's hard. I think it's hard too, because, you know, if you're flipping through the channels and you come on, you know, it's a pickleball match, you know, that say they get a spot on Fox or whatever, you know, and you see your casual player who's just, you know, you're a guy that just hits the shit out of the ball all the time, right? And you're watching Ben and JW dink 75 times in a row. I'm not sure it's going to catch your attention.
I mean, that's a great point. And arguably, like Ashley said, I think, you know, we both learned a lot from watching the pros so up close, but it's not playground pickleball. And you could argue that playground pickleball is actually more entertaining to watch because you've got bangers, it's got guys hitting from the baseline.
Yep.
Just as I actually think, and something that maybe pro pickleball should lean more to, I actually think the most fun from a spectator sense pro pickleball to watch is mixed up. I like watching mixed doubles. I think it's really fun. And like maybe there's a greater way to sort of highlight and appreciate the mixed doubles part. And
Yeah,
I don't know, but you're right, Jimmy. Like it's not the most fun to watch, but I think you could say the same thing about golf. You've got to know a lot about golf to enjoy watching golf. You don't have to know that much about tennis or basketball.
very technical, right? Yeah.
Like, so I don't know if you just need to hit a critical mass of participants, and then a fraction of them will watch and they'll appreciate it. I don't know, but I do wish, to Ashley's point, I completely agree. I wish there was something in the presentation of the sport on the pro side that felt a little more fun, a little more accessible to those who like to play but aren't like super cutthroat about it, and also that differentiates it from watching other pro sports, because it is unique in how it's grown, and it's unique in what it achieves on the sport front in this country or anywhere in the world. And
it has been, honestly, it has been America's fastest growing sport the past 4 to 5 years consecutively. That's wild to see that growth.
Yeah. And so I think we're getting there. We're getting to that number where it's like, okay, if only 5 or 10% of people who play this sport watch it, that's enough. You know, we're probably getting to that. Like, so.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up. We really appreciate your time. One last question for myself. How is it dealing with the pros? Who do you like? Who do you dislike? We want names. Come on, put them out there. Who's the least favorite one to deal with?
Ryan Sherry's the best to deal with.
He's the absolute greatest. I mean, he was basically like, he was almost like a producer on the film. He was so helpful.
I'm a massive Irina fan, even though she's not in the movie a ton.
Hey, the scene with Irina Jesse though was spectacular.
Yeah,
that was really funny. I'm a big Lady Hanson fan.
Also, I got to say, one of my favorite parts, and it's only because I really love to needle Pardo, is when he says, I'd put any amount of money that top tennis players would come over and just get smashed. And then you see Isner and Sock beat Jesse and Annalie.
Yeah.
It was truly like, as we say in the film, it truly was a few hours later. It was the same day. He said that on the afternoon of that.
I mean, that was,
And it changed, because these gatekeepers got involved. Like, the waters were so great. It just, like, at the beginning, we would kind of go directly to them. And then as time went by, we would go through their agent, and that was understandable, especially because Annalie was a minor, but not as easy. But the family was great. Like, Tom was great. Steve was great. Like, it was the gatekeepers who were at times difficult.
We did a whole episode once on how agents ruin everything.
Great. I'll tell you what, I'll give a shout out to someone who I think is like really smart and articulate, and that was Hannah Johns. Hannah Johns like spoke really well in the doc, was like really great to deal with. Like she was great. Ben was really easy.
Do you think the Todd family prayer had anything to do with Paris getting paid?
100%.
The Lord works in mysterious ways. Well, like, you know, they were great. Like, we were really. I know you want me to dog on someone.
No. I honestly thought that Paris. I mean, look, like you want your kids to know their worth, right?
Yeah, it's a really.
And I didn't see any issue
I always
with
said
it.
to everybody, because people love that scene, but I'm like, I love the Todd parents. Like, even if you're not religious, like, just take that whole.
No, honestly, yeah, and I think that it kind of.
We went to church after that for the first time in a couple of years.
Yeah, I've been praying for my investments for a while now. I mean, it's been great.
Also, like, it's a funny thing because like the message is like really, like you said, know your worth. Like, I want to tell my daughter to fly like an eagle and not to be a chicken on the farm. Like, you know,
favorite quotes in the movie. Angela Todd just comes out with these one-liners. All like, we put these on t-shirts. These are
yeah, I mean, you can tell that these are people that speak in front of thousands at church every Sunday. Like, how do you not walk out of there and not just be motivated, right? Like,
right, totally.
And, yeah, I love Angela Todd. She's awesome, and and then like I think we also just really appreciate. Like, I think people were by and large like really authentic. Like, you know, you have Tyson on there talking about his like growth and
New teeth.
You know,
he almost admitted, you know, like in a way that he created this persona.
I love it. That was so great. That was so authentic, and it was
and like that, like he was like, yeah, and I've kind of embraced it, and now I've, you know, this kind of. You know, because and Leia's like, yeah, everyone loved Tyson growing up. He had no tattoos, clean cut.
Yeah.
And now he's like completely different. Now he's got Meg covering his entire back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's great, like, I love Matt Manassi and Billy Bush in the van, and there's just like,
yeah.
I kind of do that. Like,
we don't really know, like, you know.
Yeah. When he interviewed Drew Brees, Billy Bush came. He was there.
Yeah.
And they actually played singles together, and they were just chirping at each other the entire time.
Who won that? Drew did, right?
Drew won.
He was down.
Yeah.
I've played with Billy. He should play singles. I'm just gonna say that. He doesn't. He might now that his partner get everything. Like, singles is the perfect game.
It's a good game for him.
Yeah.
All right. How do people stay up to date with you guys? Where do they find you, or do you want your Instagram handles out there, or what's the best way?
Yeah, I mean, Craig's not on social media. The film has an Instagram account, and then I have a personal Instagram account.
What is the film? Is it Dreambreaker movie? Is that I should know this. Hold on.
I can look it up.
I have to look it up.
Yeah, Dreambreaker movie.
Yeah. And then kind of.
What's the next tournament or event you guys will be at?
You know, it's funny. Like, I think we both needed to take a little time out from pickleball after finally wrapping, and I'm ready to like really. I played. I went to see my parents in Georgia like a month or so ago, and I went to the YMCA that my parents belonged to, and I played with like all these retirees at like 9 in.the morning at a basketball court in the YMCA, and I was like reminded of how, like, in a Steve Kuhn sort of way of like appreciating like the kind of beauty of what this sport is doing, and it's like really kind of roped me back in. And even looking at that very bright MLP footage from this weekend and talking to you guys, like I'm ready to like end my self-imposed sabbatical.
You're ready. You guys, we need to have you guys come out to MLP San Clemente. Like,
I filmed the MLP. What's the Lifetime Fitness? Is that the
the Lifetime out there? Yeah,
I filmed at one of those. That's a great venue. I would definitely to one of those for sure.
I think June 26th is when they're back there.
Are they doing Atlanta again in the fall? At that
Oh yeah, I do Atlanta because Craig and I are both from Georgia.
So they're not doing an MLP Atlanta, but they're doing a PPA.
They're doing a
Atlanta
PPA one in like 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
At a lifetime there as well.
Oh yeah. I'd like to do that.
And then they're doing October, Craig. They're doing New York again, or no, August, end of August, maybe September.
Okay, yeah, I missed. I was traveling. I mean, that was huge. Like, and they to do it in that venue was a great. Also, I think
for MLP finals, the playoffs will be in Central Park.
That is awesome. Yeah,
really cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for your time. Make sure to stay on after this, and then we'll get everything uploaded. Once again, thanks for your time. We really appreciated it.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us.
This was really fun.